And we're very pleased today to invite our keynote speaker, a community leader, Yogendra Jain. Yogendra Jain is a technologist, serial entrepreneur, and a passionate practitioner of compassionate living. He is author of the book Jain Way of Life, which I'm sure many of us know of. And if you don't already, I highly recommend it. It's a guide to compassionate, healthy, and happy living. He's done pioneering work in digital health and mental health, medical devices, telecom, IoT, and AI. Yogendra started his career at MIT Lincoln Labs in research before founding and operating several successful companies. Yogendra is based in Boston and is a well-known figure across the US Jain community, in particular as an author, keynote speaker, and teacher. Yogendra was a director, VP, and secretary of Jaina. He has developed groundbreaking seminars, including Ancient Scriptures Come Alive, Comparative Religion, Rebranding and Repackaging Religion, Discovery of the Soul, Strengthening of Faith, Meditation, Mind, Body, Soul, and Journey to Happiness and Equanimity. He holds a BS in Biomedical Engineering from Boston University, a master's degree in EE from Rice University, and an MBA from Babson College. So it's probably very clear to you now why we've invited Yogendra to give our keynote speech today, our keynote talk. And the title of that talk is Anekāntavāda in the Age of Information, When Truth is Abundant, but Judgment and Action are Not. So with that introduction, I warmly welcome you, Yogendra Jain. Thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Dr. Miller, and thank you, Dr. Praveen Jain. After I heard when I attended the conference yesterday, you guys were geeking out on so many interesting things. I don't think I'm going to come even close to that kind of level of scholarship, but I do want to bring in a perspective of some of the things that are happening in modern times as through my work and through a lot of the thinking that I've been doing and teaching that directly impact Anekāntavāda. So, and also before I begin, I want to tell you that the Arihanta Institute, I think it's the first institution of this kind. And I believe that this is going to be the platform for Jains and to share Jainism and Jain way of life in not only North America, but worldwide. And so I'm so happy, not only that you're doing this conference, but also all the wonderful activities you do. So let me get started. Right. We all know Anekāntavāda. We all talk about it, right? It's always the elephant in the room, right? And you've seen images of this, right? One person here, one blind person thinks that the legs are a tree trunk. The other one thinks the tail is a snake. One thinks that the ears are the fan. And they're all fighting amongst each other. And it was best captured, I believe, by this poem by John Godfrey Saxe. It was in the 1800s, and I make my Parshala kids read it multiple times in a year. And the poem ends with this. You can probably imagine how it starts and so on. And it ends like this. And so these men of Hindustan disputed long and loud, each in his own opinion, exceeding stiff and strong, though each was partly in the right and all were in the wrong. Sounds familiar, right? And now assume that one of those blind people, a new one person came in, and they had these AI glasses, right? By Ray-Ban Meta, they recently introduced this, that those glasses with their cameras will be able to tell exactly, hey, this is an elephant and these are the specifications of the elephant, right? So in this talk today, what I want to focus on is I want to define where so much information is coming from. Million times more information than what was could have been gathered in the past. I want to examine the root causes of how we form our views, how the biology shapes our views, and look at examples that are somewhat familiar and not familiar. And then explore in this adapting and changing world, How will Anekāntavāda, in the world of statistics, algorithms, and AI, there's an exciting path ahead for us. And that's what I'd like to explore. So I believe you all have heard the word, have seen the word, which means many aspects of the doctrine, right? Anekāntavāda. The core insight here, we don't say that reality is fuzzy. We don't say truth is relative. It is not that all views are equally valid. So I keep having to get my head around that, because we respect all the views. Of course we do, but doesn't mean all the views are right. But it is a lot more precise. It's saying reality is real, it's singular, elephant is one, and no single human being may be able to fully perceive or capture it in this day and age, right? Every perspective is partial, not wrong, partial. And there are three parts to Anekāntavāda. And I suspect this is a review for a lot of you, but it's okay to look at something that you know again and again. So the first part obviously is Nyayavad, right? It is every statement is made from a particular standpoint. So when you see that crown over there, to a prince, it's a crown. To a jeweler, it's a bunch of diamonds and gold, right? Just as you know, a rain for a child is a sad thing to see, but for a farmer, it's a great thing to see. And for a firefighter, it's life-saving, right? The second part is Syadvad, right? It takes it even further. It's how we speak. Reality is not static. Syadvad answers, you need to discipline your language in the way you assert the perspectives, right? You say, not it is from the standpoint, but you say, perhaps it is. And that's important. And then the third part of Anekāntavāda is Saptabhangi, right? And so this says, perhaps it is, perhaps it is not, perhaps it is both, it is and it is not. And as you know, even in science, sometimes we are unable to identify the exact location of some of the particles, and we have to be able to say, okay? So these are the three major elements of Anekāntavāda, and I'm hoping this is a review for a lot of you. If not, if it's new, great. But you see, Anekāntavāda does not stand on its own. There are three parts to this, right? So the first part obviously is ahimsa, and the other part is Anekāntavāda. And without that, Anekāntavāda would not be able to stand alone. And let me explain, right? So the goal in life, I like to think, and according to some of the Jain philosophy as well, is happiness and equanimity, at least in this life, as part of our larger goal for attaining nirvana, right? Sukh and samta is what we like to be able to achieve in this life, right? And the way we get there is minimizing hinsa, minimizing harm to yourself and to the people around you. And how do we do that? You cannot minimize harm. Okay? You cannot minimize harm if you are stuck on one particular point of view. You say, my version is the only version. So we need to loosen the grip, and that is done through aparigraha, right? Aparigraha has other meanings too in terms of external, to share and to manage what we have. But in this particular case, releasing the grip on our thoughts, on our something that we hold so dearly, and we're not looking at other options, right? The third part of the triangle is, as I mentioned, ahimsa. We have to ground ourselves in some ethical domain. We cannot say all the perspectives are right, or yes, maybe this or maybe that. No, we, at least in Jain tradition, we ground ourselves in ahimsa. And without the grounding of ahimsa, Anekāntavāda is not possible, at least in the way we are thinking about it, right? Ahimsa will be hollow. Ahimsa gives us a method and purpose. Ahimsa first always. So now that we have talked about Anekāntavāda, we've talked about the three major pillars that are so critical to Anekāntavāda. Let's at least take a moment to define what we mean by facts, perspectives, and truth, and then finally judgment, because these are the things that are going to help us define the next set of things that I want to talk about, right? So you guys see on the left here, a glass half full, half empty. Everybody knows what that is, right? Some people say it's half empty. Some people say half full. The truth is it's 100 ml of water, right? Facts are stubborn, okay? Evolution, it's a fact. Earth is warming is a fact. The moon orbiting the Earth, that's a fact, right? However, perspectives, nayas, are how the fact is encountered by us. A farmer and a firefighter both know it's raining. Their nayas are completely different than of a child. And then the question of truth. Yes, truth does exist. We may not be able to reach it, but applying the right perspectives, combining the right set of perspectives, we get closer to truth. And then eventually, as we get closer to truth, it's through judgments that we make by combining perspectives. So I want to eventually talk about judgments, and this is where I want to take a moment. The crisis of judgment. We have so much information. We have so much information on the internet. We have so many things feeding our perspectives, right? But judgment continues to be a problem. The amount of agreement that we have is far less now than it would have been in the past. Judgment has not scaled with information and with facts. And this is not a technology problem. It's not a political problem. It's a perception problem. And what's incredible is that 25 years ago, Mahavira and many of the scholars had been thinking about these issues. And it is just mind-boggling as to how wonderful this philosophy of Anekāntavāda is, and it applies to us more and more as we continue progressing. So to understand this, let's pause for a moment and let's look at the brain, right? This is where the source of perspectives come in. This is the source of judgment. This is the core of immediate reaction takes place, right? In the past, there were a few people that influenced our thinking. The priest, our parents, perhaps our friends 2,500 years ago. Then the printed press came. Literacy, people who were literate were able to access information. Then mass media came about. It democratized, right? And centralized the message. But one editor, one person could reach millions of people. And then internet changed the game even further. Now suddenly 20, 30, hundreds of perspectives show up, let's say on Twitter. Non-stop stream of perspectives are showing. And then the social media algorithms arrive, where the perspective that we tend to prefer gets echoed constantly. Today, two people in the same city, same age, same education, can be living, but in a completely different information world. And then as we head into the future, soon we'll be having our AI agents, our personal agents, our digital twins whispering in our ears, new set of perspectives. So now we've used the word perspective quite a bit. What is the genesis of that? And how does it take shape? Let's take a moment and talk about that. There are many forces that act, that generate our perspective. So, for example, if I show you the color red, and every time you see it, something painful happens to you. Eventually, every time you see a red, your body is going to go in stress mode. Even before you've had a chance to process that, oh, well, it's just a red light or something else, right? That is conditioning. It's one of the most powerful forces that shape our perspective. So as you see on the right over here, there are 6 major forces that are working on us. And we need to understand that because perspectives combined generate our judgment. So obviously, knowledge and education makes a huge difference. Culture and lived experiences. The third one, emotion, stress, and trauma, and our brain gut health is huge. Two people can have the same background, same everything, but if their chemicals in their brains are different, if their depression or anxiety or other things, their perspective is going to be clouded in a huge way. Or if someone has strong ego, fear, or major self-interest that they're working for and not thinking about others. And then the last two have recently shown, well, actually the algorithmic amplification. Algorithms are the ones that are deciding what we will see and what we don't see, what news we see, what we don't. And then the last one, I think, is the most important one. Our perspectives need to be grounded in some ethical foundation. And I cannot imagine a stronger, better foundation for us than ahimsa. So these are perspectives. But remember something. Remember our evolution. Let's say a couple 100,000 years ago, a woolly mammoth. I love using the woolly mammoth example. Woolly mammoth is chasing us. Our natural reaction is not to like, oh, well, maybe, that's a perspective, or maybe that's the reason. No, no, no. We got to run. And person who didn't run pretty much died. And so we are hardwired to make sometimes really rapid judgment, the fight or flight instinct, right? Later on, not later on, but in simultaneously, we sometimes pause for reasoning. Sometimes we go with gut feel. Sometimes I feel this, when we make a decision. But with the one on the right that you see, this says stimulus, this says response, and this is a bridge. I love this image because it tells me that the better, the stronger bridge that I can have here, the Anekāntavāda bridge, the better my response and the more ahimsic my response is going to be. So now let's take a moment to explore what is going on in the brain. What is going on in the brain? So you remember my example of the red dot? When a stimulus of a red dot shows up, this is a relay station. It goes directly to the amygdala and says, stress, stress, stress. Someone's chasing us. This path is activated far faster than we even can think about, oh, well, these are the views, or maybe this is happening. No, this is the basic life survival instinct that we have. Even in this day and age where the threats are far fewer, this has not left our brain. It still very much dominates our brain. The second path, so you see the red path and there's the green path. So this particular path, you have a choice. Here in your prefrontal cortex, you're able to look at multiple perspectives. Pause for a few seconds or tens of seconds or a minute or two. Think through the various options and then give your response and judgment. So this is how our brain is wired. And next time when you get angry in a moment of quarter of a second, you know that it's this path that's activated. But instead of getting angry, you pause. It's this particular path. And then with all these perspectives coming in into our brain, we need to get to a judgment. We need to make a decision. We can't just be having inaction. And so the question is, why is judgment still such a difficult thing for us to do? And let's follow the path for a moment. Here are the facts. Multiple different people, due to various filters that are being used to map those perspectives, to generate those perspectives. So one person may have a very strong ego, the other person may have some incentive, the third person has some past trauma relating to the fact. Whatever the reason, multiple perspectives come in. And then we have this thing called Anekāntavāda as a filter. We see the perspectives and then we weigh them differently. We flag if there's some potential contamination that have taken place in this. And then we give judgment. And we give judgment, which eventually will take us to the truth, but let's not be so sure because, as we said, this is sort of very hard in this day and age for us to think about. It's good to strive towards, but remember, sometimes a fact or an event or stimulus can activate this particular pathway where you don't even go through all this. You go from stimulus to response to judgment. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but the bottom line I wanted to share is our ethical foundation of ahimsa is so important for Anekāntavāda and all the perspectives to take their proper shape. Without that, we would be flailing with many of our thoughts and not have a grounding on that. So I've already mentioned that before, but I just wanted to emphasize. Okay, I just want to do a time check. I think I have about, what, 8 more minutes, 10 more minutes?
Yeah, 8 to 10 more minutes is perfect. Yes.
Okay, great. Please, I have 43 slides, but I'm only going to focus on a few more. This is by far my favorite slide, not because I've spent many years working on these things, but how the mathematics today, the machine learning today, the algorithms today are exactly what I just described is we're doing it as when we're practicing Anekāntavāda. what Mahavir and others articulated. So for example, this is a very famous algorithm called the Bayes algorithm, right? It says that every time you get new information, you update your belief. But you do it proportionally. You don't like completely flip your belief. You add some probability to it. Every time you get a new information, right? This is Syadvad expressed as equation, right? The other one is multiple perspectives, multiple nows, and then you weigh them more or less. And then you add them up and you say, hey, here's my decision. This one is the most interesting. I spent a full year, probably more, working on this algorithm. My job was to develop algorithm for a radar, and this was a long time back, to track fighter jets. I like to think it's a defensive project, right? So there are many of these Russian backfire bombers, or some of them, they're coming through and they're maneuvering, and I need to be able to figure out where they are at any particular time. And so there's an algorithm called Kalman filter where you look at the present position, you look at the return from the radar, right? And then you say, okay, here is, but you have to make the prediction because the plane is moving pretty fast. So you have to make a prediction that, hey, the next 1 second or 2 seconds before I get another return, the plane has moved this much. So I came up with a beautiful algorithm on this, based around this. It turned out that if the target maneuvered really fast, I lost the tracking. And so what I had to do is to add an error matrix around my prediction. So whenever I predicted, I had to say, it's here within plus or minus this probability of error. We call that the humility principle. Not saying, hey, this is it, 100%, I don't want to hear about it, right? These algorithms are used in many, many of the products and technologies and systems that you see today. And as I close my talk, there are a couple of things I just wanted to share. So you've seen the Tesla robots, they're not too far. We want to make sure that they're grounded in the Anekāntavāda operating system and the Ahimsa operating system. So that's probably one of the projects I do want to think about and take on in the near future. Because without that, they will not be reflecting. They come as factory defaults, right? Let me skip this slide for now. In my previous company, I had 6 or 7 VPs. I was a CEO, and every time we met Monday morning, I had to remind myself that each of these VPs are coming in over the weekend. They spend with their family, with their friends, with whatever challenge they face. And they're coming in, and as we all sit, there's a cesspool of their history, not only over the past weekend, but their ego, greed, deceit, bias, and my own. And I had to take this into account as I hear their perspectives. And that's a very hard thing to do. But it's something that is so important, that how perspectives can get poisoned. And knowing how they get poisoned, why they get poisoned, and who can potentially poison is a very important part. And then I want to leave you with this particular slide. Okay? So you see the person on the left, it's me. See my glasses here? These are the Meta Ray-Ban glasses with AI built in. I can walk around, I can ask it anything. This particular person, let's say, has the earbuds, and we both have our digital agent in the back. You see these digital agents? And while we're having a discussion, while we're having a negotiation, these digital agents are not only talking to each other algorithmically, getting all sorts of viewpoints, all the other viewpoints, and putting those together, feeding into us, and almost doing the negotiations. That kind of reality, believe it or not, is months away, 6 months. It probably can be enabled now. And that is what our near future is coming towards. And I like to end the talk by saying, look, one thing I haven't covered is how do we strengthen our practice on the Anekāntavāda and so on. But I think we can talk about maybe some other time. But I've been thinking about how to teach Anekāntavāda, how to make this part of our innate nature. A lot of it is. Teach it early, teach it to our children of collaborative culture. Make sure that our AI is grounded in the truth mapping, right? At the end of the day, no matter where we get our perspectives, who it comes from, how it's clouded, we are responsible for our actions. We cannot not be responsible for that. And with that, I continue to be so impressed by our religion, by our tradition, by our way of life. And Anekāntavāda is such an important part of who we are as Jains. And so with that, 1 minute before my time, I want to thank everybody for taking the time. I really, really appreciate Arihanta Institute and Christopher and Praveen for giving me this opportunity. And if I could do a quick shameless promotion, the second edition of Jain Way of Life book is coming out. In fact, it's in printing. The Long Range Planning Committee is printing this, the Jaina Long Range Planning, and it will be available probably 3 months from now. It's going to take a while to get it shipped here. So if you need to get a copy in a few weeks, please do visit www.jwl.org. And with that, I want to thank everybody for your time, and I'd be happy to continue the discussion.
Thank you so much, Yogendra. It was a very clear, sincere, grounded, and really well thought out presentation, and I think our audience would agree with that. So we do welcome questions in the Q&A as we did yesterday. If you have a question you want to share, I have it open here in front of me, and feel free to type them in there and send them over, and I can present them here to our keynote speaker, Yogendra Jain. And Yogendra, one thing I forgot to say at the beginning, and I want to make sure I do this, is that your wife, Preeti Jain, was the Jain Center of Greater Boston Patshala director and had been teaching for the last 30 years. So really special to have her kick off the conference with Namaskar Mantra as well. So thank you for you both for your participation. I already see some questions coming in the Q&A. The first one is from one of our graduate students, from Chaitanya, who asks, how can AI recommendation algorithms be redesigned to move beyond engagement metrics and instead prioritize Jain principles such as Anekāntavāda, Syadvada, Ahimsa, and Aparigraha, ensuring that users are consistently exposed to the multifaceted nature of truth to reduce polarization? And I suppose I was thinking something similar along the lines that I can add in there, which was basically along these lines, how can we train AI in Jain philosophy? And have you seen attempts at doing that? Because I've seen, Oxford ethicists are at Claude. Is there a Jain ethicist at, X company or Y company? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Wow, that is a holy grail for us. If we can do that. And here's the thing. without having thought a lot about this, are we willing to pay $10 a month to get this kind of engagement with our AI? And if we are, easy. It's all the path to money. And the reason advertisements in the background, number of hits and so on are coming in, because those things are what is exciting us, and someone needs to make money at the end of the day. The content creators and the people who are streaming the content to us and these companies. So I believe that that is the solution. And if we do that, we can have an extremely interesting version of TikTok, extreme version of Instagram, and so on at the same time. We don't close it so tight that we don't get to see other views. As long as people can decide what their filter level is. There are some people who say, you know what, Jain scriptures are the only way to go. Others may say, no, I want to get other views also. So I'll keep my answer short. I'll try to.
Oh, that was great. I would love to see a Jane trained versions of all the things you're saying, because I mean this is already happening with other philosophical approaches, and I think it would be a fantastic thing. So let's put that one on the back burner as a project, because that sounds really exciting.
Yeah.
So here, Atul Shah, someone who's worked with us before. Good to have you here with us, Atul, one of our faculty members as well, said, excellent and deep analysis, Yogendra. Contemporary science and education have separated character from knowledge. You are asking the two to be entwined. Doesn't that shift pedagogy completely? So science and education being brought back together, I suppose, is what he's asking.
Hey, good to see you. We had actually started a magazine a long time back, and it was editor Jane Spirit magazine. Uh, I am sorry, but I did not fully comprehend that question. If you want to try again, I would love to hear it.
Let me try again, because I think I need to read it again for myself. So he said, contemporary science and education have separated character from knowledge. So character
Yes.
from knowledge are the things that have been separated in science and education, which I know is also a passion of Atul to consider. And you are asking then for the two to be entwined, character and knowledge. And he's saying, I suppose the question is, doesn't that shift pedagogy completely? How does that shift the way we teach? How does that shift pedagogy when we bring back character and knowledge together?
Wow. Um, First of all, I think we don't do such a good job of character building. We don't do such a good job. Okay, let me not just talk about the Jane kids and so on, but otherwise. Uh, I think there's so much room in this world. We're forcing knowledge down, our kids' brain nonstop, but we never bring it to life in terms of, hey, this is how you want to build a character. This is how you want to look at the multiple views. This is how you want to practice nonviolence for the greater good. And I do believe that there's a happy medium of that, and we're definitely not there. We are far more towards sciences. We're far more towards, um, you know, even in the literature that we study. Even I remember, you do, liberal arts. You read a lot of books, but there's very little talk about, hey, this character was, practice nonviolence. This was look at the multiple views that this was looking at. I think some of that has to be brought in as more of character building. I'm not sure if I addressed the question, but I just wanted to share a few thoughts there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are ways and there are pedagogies for certainly bringing together character and knowledge, and you've addressed that quite well. And I know it's also a passion of Atul's, so thank you, Atul, for asking that question. Just kind of going through here at what an anonymous attendee asks: how can we train AI in resolving conflicts and preventing and minimizing violence in wars? That's interesting, because it's often we hear about it being used for creating violence, and kind of calculating violence in wars, how do we use it to resolve conflicts and prevent and minimize violence in wars? And maybe there's a Jain approach to that as well. I don't know, but that's the kind of the question. You spoke of defense, using it as a mode of defense, not an offense, but a defense. So it's seems to be part of what this question's addressing.
Right. See, look, I mean, if you look at how AI is being trained, whole bunch of information is brought in. And then you're not training it. You're essentially probabilistically thinking, okay, these are the next set of, tokens. These are the next set of things that normally would come after this particular word or this particular issue, because that's what I've seen in the world. And that's what's going to end up happening if we don't figure out a way saying, you know what, I want to inject a Jane rag in there or something that's, some knowledge base that's specific, that encompasses a lot of the Jane thinking. But we may not want to throw all of our literature in there. You see, if we do that, now we've gotten the very traditionalist view also and a modern view, and now it gets all mixed up as well. So I think we need to think through ourselves. Do we want the traditionalist view? Do we want the modern plus traditional? Do we want the AAA view? And I think we need to, as a team, do some thinking on that. And I don't think it's going to be very difficult to build the AI. It'll be difficult for us to define the parameters.
Great. Thank you. So our next question comes from another one of our graduate students, Jay Taxony Hewitt, and they ask, first of all, thank you for your helpful and considered thoughts. This was very interesting. In your final comment, you spoke about agent-assisted conversations and negotiations. Presumably, these agents are rented or purchased in most cases. How do we account for economic domination or disadvantage in such scenarios? If the viewpoint being expressed is not just a view, but also a price point. So I suppose this is weighing the ability to even have access to these tools that would be so powerful for generating capital, essentially, at the end of the day.
Wow, I haven't thought about that. I mean, for $20, you get so much of Claude and ChatGPT and so on. But not everybody can afford that. And you're absolutely right. It will create inequity, right? But the it will create that. I really don't know. The price are going to come down significantly where every single person in the world will have access, just like people have access to mobile devices. When it first came out, no, we didn't. But now I like to think that almost everybody who wants a mobile device can afford one, 99.99% of the world probably, right? I think the same thing will happen, right? The question will always be just like, TikTok and Instagram, who's going to build your agent? What input you're going to have in the agent, what we will, let's just take Ariana Institute, for example, will do to help you build those agents in your vision of what life and way of life needs to be, right? I think that's where the interesting challenges will come about.
Yeah, thank you. It'll be interesting to see how much of it is privatized and how much support there is for it to be a kind of public access.
Correct, correct.
Yeah. Okay, the next question comes from Pretend Bongdivala, who's one of our graduate students as well. He said, it's excellent presentation. For the first time, I saw Anekāntavāda related to biology and the corporate world. The question is on the analogy of the elephant. If all blind men feed the AI models false information, what if bad actors feed false views, perspectives, and then truth will never be the truth? And can the false, what is false can become the truth? So essentially asking, I guess the inputs have to be true in the first place in order for the AI to express these Jain or follow a kind of set Jain ethics.
If some things keep me up at night, it's exactly that. Okay. We are and companies with deep pockets and so on, and let's say um, the CEO happens to have a particular point of view that gets pushed down on us, and we've already seen it, that could happen. So then the question comes up, how do we manage that? How do we prevent that? How do we detect that? I believe the other thing that we will need to do and should do are be able to run test cases, be able to run that, hey, does this match my Jane thinking? Does this match my... So anytime, just like, for example, now you have investment funds that are green investment funds, that are ethical investment funds. Similarly, we will need to have AI agents that are, green AI agents, that are ethical AI agents. And maybe multiple of those are coming together to create the one that I would like to have. But remember, now all of a sudden I'm injecting my particular view, and that itself may be so biased due to, those six forces that I mentioned. Now all of a sudden, no matter how much what would we do to keep it honest and sincere and grounded in our values, I've just biased it, right? So it's almost like a catch-22 here. How much control do you give to the individual user versus a third party? And I believe those problems need to be um, resolved. Okay, I mean, I'm thinking about this for the first time as you're bringing it up. uh,
That's often one of the nice things about these events and these kind of groundbreaking topics is they become brainstorming sessions for us all. So I'm thinking this through with you too, Yogendra, as we go through, as these excellent questions come from the audience. So thank you. Here's another good question, and maybe gives you a chance to say a little bit about some of the content that you skipped if you like. From Shweta Jain, this says, great presentation. Amazing how you weaved ahimsa, aparigraha, and Anekāntavāda together. I noticed a few slides were skipped in consideration of time and we couldn't get to Saptabhangi. Would you be able to share your thoughts on that piece? You could either share your slides or you could just talk to us, whatever you prefer, if you wanted to say a little bit more about your thoughts on Saptabhangi.
so I have let me just share. So I see that as conditional, right? It is, it is not. I've always had a hard time fully understanding and appreciating that. But the analogy that drives home for me is there's a prism, hmm? And on one side, there's a light coming in, and then there are seven different light breaks up into seven different colors, right? It is, it is not, but the same light now has seven different components. That is the way I have, um, you know, at least internally looked at Saptabhangi, right? In the Jain context, I believe, and some of you are far more stronger scholars than I have, but we say, look, soul is transforming, right? Karmas are transforming. The atoms and molecules are transforming, and the uncertain principle, right? That you cannot, if you try to look at something, even just the fact you're looking at can change, and therefore you cannot absolutely say, hey, the electron is right here. So to me, it is a great way to cover our whatever, right? I want to not be so absolute and say it is this or it is not this. I want to be able to say, you know what, it may be this, it may not be this. So that's why Nyavad, Syadvad, and Saptabhangi together, if I practice it, if I think about it, uh, do come and create an ecosystem where I can go in my day-to-day life and feel good at the end of the day that I've not hurt living beings, I have not hurt people around me, and I have done my best.
Thank you. Yeah. Were you finished with that thought? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, thank you for elaborating on that. I know it's hard to fit it all in, but that helps quite a bit. Shuda Jane has a question to kind of shift the discussion a little bit, and I think this was something I was thinking about too, with regard to the wonderful work that you do on the AAA, and I've seen you talk about in various contexts. It says, absolutely brilliant and enlightening thoughts. Thanks for your sincere and deep work. Could you please share your thoughts on application of Jain principles, Anekāntavāda, Syadvāda, Ahimsa into larger perspectives on sustainability? Exploring the Jain values towards UN Sustainable Development Goals to contribute to the larger issues for the future, ranging from biodiversity conservation, climate action, peace, clean energy, sustainable communities, and mental well-being, just to name a few. So I think sustainability is the question, and how those principles that you've discussed in this presentation can help with regard to the UN's sustainability goals.
I believe the AAA should be our core, just as you go to the gym to strengthen your physical core. And so we've actually started this project with the Jaina LRP, and I'm leading the project on the AAAs, trying to get the AAA signage in every single temple in the world. Jain temples start with, of course. And then every home should have a little thing, maybe, where it has AAA elaborated. And then we have some samples of those. I cannot think of a more powerful strengthening of or developing of inner core with that. And if that happens, I think what you're talking about, sustainability, will be the byproduct of that. Okay. Right now, we have not done a good enough job of imbibing the AAAs or sharing the AAAs with the rest of the world. We have held it internally. I don't know what we're holding for. These treasures are so applicable. And we are too busy in our own temples doing, whatever we do. I'm sorry, I don't mean to get, but why are we not sharing out at all? Okay. And that is why we will not see the world changing. That is why the AAAs will never see the light of day. Right? Right. I believe that, one second. So I just want to, there was one slide that I had that was exactly talking to that particular point. No, this is still very tactical. Sorry. I thought I had something on that. But all I can say is we as Jains have made a negligible dent. And I think AAA, the Anekāntavāda, Parigraha, and Ahimsa are the way to move this into the mainstream. And we need to think through that. And sustainability is going to be the natural output of that.
Thank you, Yogendra. So I think we have time for at least one more question here. I'm trying to see where there's a new one popping up here at the bottom from an anonymous attendee who says, AI takes a lot of power and water to run, which can be hard on the planet. Building the computers for AI also creates waste and used materials that can hurt nature. Even simple AI tasks like making a picture uses a surprising amount of energy. So according to Jainism, should we use it much or not? That's something I struggle with every day in my life.
I think all of us struggle with that. It's such a pain point. Every time I put my prompts together, I'm like, hey, do I really, really need to add this? So you're absolutely right. I don't have a good answer for that. I do know, being in the field a little bit, that the power consumption issues are huge, but the algorithms are getting better. The chips are getting much more targeted towards the AI processing, a lot of the matrix manipulation that generally happens in AI. And I do think that in the next 5 to 10 to 20 years, we will be much better at solving the energy crisis. Of course, AI will probably 10x the requirement of what we need to do. I don't have a good answer, but I would just, at least me personally, I try harder to be a little bit more mindful and not use it willy-nilly on, you know, randomly on what I'm thinking about. And it is exactly for the reason to minimize trampling on the planet.
Chris, you're muted or
Sorry about that. Thank you. I was reading the Swiss newspaper here recently about all the ways that they're taking the heat and the byproducts of the AI that is potentially environmentally destructive or will add to climate warming and all of these things, and using it to heat the homes in Geneva. So we can only
Mhm.
hope that these kinds of solutions are always piggybacking on the new developments in AI, as some of which you've described as well, with these better chips and more efficient systems. Thank you so much, Yogendra. I didn't know if there's anything else you want to say before we transition to the next panel, but I am so happy that you agreed to give our keynote speech when I invited you. And you've made a very clear, as I said, and sincere talk that was very well thought out. And I can tell from the engagement we've had how much the audience has enjoyed it.
Great. Now, look, bottom line, please don't take this as a negative thing. Um, Neuroplasticity is now real. I mean, 50 years ago, they said, no, we can rewire our brains. And one thing I didn't talk about is how to strengthen that bridge that I taught, the Anekāntavāda. And there are ways to do that. And they're not very hard, very difficult, but it is something we have to be mindful of. So when we have our interactions, just like when we eat food, we're so careful. Let it be that when we do have such interactions, we are aware, and we will continue strengthening that. So with that, Jai Jain, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Miller. Thank you, Praveen Jain, Dr. Praveen Jain, for giving me the time and the place to talk about this.
Thank you again, Yogendra. And there are some open questions in the Q&A. If you want, you can type answers to them. That would
I
be
will
just
do that.
fine. Yeah. Parveen, were you going to say something before I head to the
no,
next panel? No.
no.
Okay, great. Well, that was a wonderful way to kick off our day. Thank you so much, Yogendra Jain.